The next little task is going to be putting a wall cap on top of this knee wall. And it's very simple. You want one continuous piece of wood that starts at the front, goes to the back, has an equal amount of overhang on both sides, and whatever you want to do with it to, I don't know, accent it or make it look like it belongs, you can do just about anything. You could do inlays in it, you could do some of those epoxy tabletop type things, you can do all sorts of things. But for Frankie here, we're gonna go ahead and keep it pretty simple. And we are gonna make it match some of the accent colors for this property, and which is, you can see in the background there, the handrail, which is very close to the floor color and very close to the original woodwork to the house. And we're gonna do that so we can carry that same aesthetic into this space. Okay, first step would be just, measure, cut, length, make sure you have overhangs. And now it's gonna be the process part. Yeah, let's go downstairs. Now typically what I like to do for the accent colors for this house is use a piece of lumber that was original to the house, like using an old floor joist or header or something like that. I don't have anything long enough. I could have butt joined a bunch of things together, but again, I need to get out of here. So I went down to the local lumber yard, picked up a rough cut 2x8. It's gonna have enough features to it to make it seem like it's original, so it's gonna match rather well. All right, first thing is first. I've already got to cut the length. I've got a back bevel on that side, so it meshes into the wall beautifully. Now I need to sand this guy down, get rid of the majority of this splintery wood, and try to leave enough of the features that it still looks old. The next step is I want to do a practice piece where I'm going to router out the back of it to make sure it fits over the top of that wall. I don't want to see any of the jagged sheetrock cuts or anything like that. So I'm just going to do a 1/2 inch deep routered section, which is from that blue line to that blue line. Now on the practice piece, I'm not going to go through and hog all this material out. All I'm going to do is sneak up on this line to make sure I have a 3/4 inch overhang from this board over the wall. So I want that line to be nice and crisp and clean, but I want to make sure that I don't go too far to me or too far in. Too far in, it won't fit. Too far over, if you ever look up from underneath, you'll see gaps. So we're going to do that. Well, that worked out just fine. Simply just by measuring off of the guide fence to the bit, the 3/4 inch, and then the height of the blade at 1/2 inch, I was able to make these routered in cuts pretty easily. All right, now for the hard part, to do it on a piece that's, 14 feet long? But make sure that you don't just hog out the entire thing, because you need to have that overhang on the front nosing of the wall. That'll make sense here in a minute. All right, that will be enough for today. Typically, when I do wall caps like these, I'll use a material that's a fair bit thicker, but this is all I can get my hands on. And when I do that, I'll put a long bevel on this corner. But I decided between how thick it is, or thin in this case, that just matching it to the window sills, I think is going to be the best option. Yeah. So tomorrow we'll burn it and sand it and poly it, just like all the other accent stuff. All right. I'm hungry. Going home. All right. Next step is going to be just giving it a light sand. If there was any, dirt in the air while I was polying this, it'd be trapped in this on the surface here. And we're going to knock that off and just kind of scratch up the surface a little bit. You need to have that bonding surface for the next layer. Go ahead and do that. I'm using a 500 grit, which is excessive. All right, you don't need to go that high. But what it will do, if you want that feature, is it'll make it feel soft. Not just smooth, but soft. You know what I mean? And for something like this, you don't need to have it feel soft. The handrails that we just did, those, you definitely want to feel soft. That's my opinion. Something I've been thinking about is building a, what's it called? An Amazon store where you can find things like this. Would you guys feel that to be offensive if I did that, or would you find it to be helpful? I'm curious. So I read other channels and comments and things, and like, oh great, now you've got an Amazon store, so you're selling out, are you? Next thing you know, you're going to be sponsored, and well, I mean, that is the goal, right? I've been doing this, been working for you for over a year now, and there's been no support. And this is the way I can get a little bit of support. Let me know. As I'm still, figuring out how this whole YouTube thing works. Tell you, the poly that I chose to use for this is rather thick, and it will end up, putting runs and little drips on things in the overnight. It'll be perfect when I leave, and then overnight just ever so slowly drifts down and causes these little drip marks. So you gotta be super careful so you don't grind too hard and sand down past the poly. Now I have it all sanded down. I'm gonna wipe it down with a damp rag, not a wet rag, a damp rag. We'll let it dry and then come back in and put another coat of poly on. When it comes to wiping down your workpiece, if you just take your rag and wipe it off, on this particular piece, because I wanted all the features in it, I wanted the saw marks, I wanted a little bit of ridge lines, I wanted to have some character to it. So the problem with that is that it leaves a bunch of the sanded material in those crevices. Crevices? Crevices. And so if you just wipe it down, you end up leaving a bunch of that stuff behind. If that happens, when you go to put your next coat of poly on, the poly is going to grab that material, ball it up, and leave it on the surface. And then when that coat of poly dries, you have all these little bumps and things. So do your best to really scrub out as much of that white material as you can. And if you're doing a natural piece and it's hard to see that white material, well, just go ahead and know it's there and scrub the heck out of it. Just give it a good scrubbing. You will thank yourself after the finished product. Inevitably, there will always be something in there. You know, there's dust floating in the air, someone opens a door, a little bit of dust kicked off the floor, you know, whatever. But always do the best you can with what you have. That is one of my philosophies, I should say, I guess. Lots of work with a torch to make it look like this.
Yeah, that's nice. Did I just poly over that?
Yeah, I used the floor poly. So oil base nice and clean. I assume people are going to be resting like wine glasses and things on there. Yeah, everything.
Oh, the video's going.
Construction sites, I tell you. There's always dust everywhere. You clean, dust. Anyway, wall cap. This thing has single-handedly tied all of my effort together. Between the original beam that's up there that was part of the cure porch from way back in the days from tuberculosis, to the floor color choice that I made, and the staircase, and the handrail, and there's features around the kitchen that have discoloration in it, and the fireplace, but we don't talk about the fireplace. No, 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 we don't talk about the fireplace. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. You know, there's been some comments in some of my shorts of, I don't like it when you burn things, or it looked better before you burned it, or whatever. You can't understand from a 1-minute video what that process does for the entire space. It just ties it all up. So keep on making those comments. Doesn't bother me one bit. Anyway. Yeah. So, if you want to get some idea of what this place was like, go back to that first video. Because right where I'm standing, this used to be a cure porch. Staircase, that didn't exist. Yep. And that first video is rough, I'll admit that, but it gives you some perspective. So if you want to see that, go ahead and hit that button there. And if you're new to the channel, welcome, thanks for watching, and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for stopping by High Peaks Home.